giving a bid for a training session, and they wanted 100 people in a Zoom session to learn to be certified to give my curiosity index, right? And I do the same thing with the perception, where you do the training. But when you have 100 people, it's a lot different doing training in this kind of a setting. And how do you connect with people in the same way in a training session?
Here's the issue. You can look them, I mean, they can look you in the eye if you're
Yeah,
the trainer,
right.
but you can't know what feedback you are getting because you're not getting the feedback back from them from their eye contact. It's a different kind of communication.
It's so
So we are dependent, if we're talking about Zoom, we are dependent for the hand raise
Mhm.
or and sometimes that doesn't come in sync with the question when it needs to be raised. So this is
It's a really interesting thing because I was on a global leader summit, world summit this morning, where I was one of the speakers. I think there's, I don't know, 200 people are speaking. This is a big event. It's a big deal. And it was all through Zoom. And had to get up at 3:30 in the morning to get ready for it because of the time change, which was part of the fun, you guys. Of
right,
well,
right.
okay,
Those of us who think we have such a
yeah,
glamour.
the glamour. So I was on this conference, and I was supposed to speak at eventually at 5, but they want you on ahead of time, whatever. And 5 o'clock comes by, and 5:10, and the person keeps talking, and it's like 5:15, and so I'm instant messaging through LinkedIn to the guy. I'm like, aren't I at 5? Did I miss, because it's in India, the main place. It was, so I'm making sure I got the time right. And he said, yeah, it's running over. And the one person had technical difficulties, and you know what I mean? So you've got technical, okay, so you never know when you're going to speak, is my point. And then when you finally get on, the woman before me, she was going over, and there was like 180 people to speak at this thing. Everybody had like 20 minutes and then 10 minutes of Q&A. And so he's interrupting in the middle of her speaking, like, well, you got to wrap it up. And you just, it's an uncomfortable setting because there's not like this setup where the light flashes, your time's up, or, it's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you work in these setups where there's that many people going and you're just one of a bunch of heads on a stamp who's talking to 100 people, and it's on Facebook Live and people are interacting, but you have no idea who your audience is really.
Well, I talk about the cognitive load factor, CL. I thought I called it factor, but it's really called the cognitive load theory, CLT.
Oh, okay.
And it's and I had said this a few weeks ago to you, and you said, "Would you repeat that again?"
Mhm.
Because I wasn't making this very clear. That which we do professionally
Mhm.
is totally separate from the way in which we do it. So the cognitive load uh, theory is that not only do we have to know what we're talking about and be the expert for which we are being hired
Mhm.
to talk about our expertise, but we also have to know that the lighting is good and the computer is working and we're not freezing just when we're about to say this most important
Oh.
piece of information, and that the children are not going to barge in, and that this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and that my door is closed so that people in my household know that I am not to be disturbed. I mean, all of these things must be considered. And here I am, the professional that I am, and you, the professional that you are. And all of a sudden, you're waiting for a red light to go off and it doesn't happen. You're waiting for somebody to say, time's up, because you're not wearing an ISB in your ear. Somebody can talk to you, and that doesn't happen. And all of a sudden, the computer stops functioning, or the Wi-Fi goes down, or something else happens, and as though we have not been crazy enough from the ramifications of this pandemic, suddenly we are thrown to the wolves with all these other considerations. And we cannot all be experts in how a computer functions. And nobody knows in advance how their Wi-Fi is going to play fair.
Yeah, today the guy is asking me a question at the end and he just froze, you know. It was-
Well, that's it.
and thankfully the people had asked the question in the chat and I was able to read it, you know. So we have backup things, but I think checklists would be real. I don't know if you have checklists in your book, but I think a checklist, like run through this, run through that. Cause I was thinking if your computer goes down, do you know how to turn on the hotspot on your phone? I mean, I can't live without the hotspot on my phone when I travel. And so
Oh,
now
no, I don't know how to do that. Why don't you tell us?
yeah, okay. All right. So if you want to use the hotspot on your phone, I use an Apple phone, so I can only tell you how to do it on Apple. If you go to your settings and you go to personal hotspot, I don't know if it's offered on other kinds of phones other than Apple, but if you go to personal hotspot, I think this is an Apple feature.
Yes.
Okay.
And mine's off.
If it
So
should be
when
off, if it's off, that's correct most of the time. But let's say you're in the airport or someplace that you need Wi-Fi and you can't get it, or you're at home and something just crashed and you need to get on your computer. You can use your phone as your router, your Wi-Fi kind of thing. So you would turn on, you know, and you would allow others to join.
allow others to join.
Yeah, and there's a Wi-Fi password that comes up, but
Yes.
And sometimes you might need that to turn on, but basically you just turn it on. And if you go back and your personal hotspot should show as the green should be on.
And then it goes to LTE.
And then when your computer, instead of looking for your router, I mean, your normal Wi-Fi at home, it'll say Diane's iPhone or whatever my phone's called.
Right.
And you pick that to hook to, and you'll use this connection if your phone's working. So that's how you would connect your computer to your phone.
How do you connect the computer to that? You just stick the
at the bottom of your computer screen where it's, you know, where you would pick your Wi-Fi that you normally connect to. You would look for your little computer icon on your phone. Yeah. I'm sorry, on your computer, and pick that, and then it'll say not connected or whatever to your normal thing because it's not working.
Right.
Search for the new one, and the new one would be this one would show up because you turned it on. It'll recognize it.
It's so nice to have a technical guru in the family.
Hey, I had to learn this. You know, I'd go out of town, and I teach for 7 universities or whatever at once. You know, still I had 10 at one point, and if it went down, I was in big trouble, right? So I'd be in hotels and their Wi-Fi would go down. And so I'd have to use my phone, and I do it a lot of times, like on airplanes, you know, you can get different Wi-Fi, different things while you're sitting on the ground or whatever. And so it's, huh?
Is that
but before they would take off, you know, if you wanted to do some work, I could do some work. And then when you get in the air, you'd use their.
But sometimes it says it's not safe.
Yeah. You don't want to do it while you're, you know, when it's not safe, but you want to do it. This is something as a backup. Like I'm supposed to be the major speaker today's event, and my Cox Communications or whatever you use turns off their Wi-Fi in your area.
Yeah, right.
Then you have this as a backup. Or you could also talk on your phone if you had to. You could use Zoom or something on your phone. And I've had to do that, and you know, and it's just maybe the camera's not as good and you want to be on your computer. I mean, there's reasons why you'd want to be maybe on your computer instead of the phone. So, I mean, there are options, but I really think it's important to know what to do if the guy freezes or the gal freezes when she's asking a question or he's asking a question, what to do if your Wi-Fi freezes. I think that there's a lot of what you should know stuff in the Zoom world, because if you're running a session and you get bombed or somebody gets in or somebody's Slack gets part of your session, that's a security issue. And you have to say, this is, if we see this, everybody, the protocol is everybody gets out now. That's it. You shut down.